USA.com.
In Philadelphia, some 9,000 city workers on day 2 of their strike. It includes sanitation, transportation, and city services. Philly resident George Pacheco says he supports the city workers' calls for better pay and benefits, even, he says, if trash could become a smelly issue.
Hey, listen, the workers got to eat, right? But I mean, it's a little inconvenient, but they were talking about so much trash on the floor, and that's because we got to do a little bit more. Just try to put that trash inside the dumpster, not leave it on the sidewalk.
A judge also ordered some of the striking 911 workers, dispatchers, to go back to work, saying their absence poses a danger to the public. The Trump administration pausing shipments on some air defense weaponry that was supposed to go to Ukraine. It comes after President Trump signaled to Ukrainian President Zelensky that he would be open to sending more anti-aircraft systems. Ukraine could be moving to an agreement where they buy their military aid from the U.S. More from ABC's James Longley.
Donald Trump has got what he wants. He's got the Europeans to step up, and he is pulling back help. But if it's moving to this commercial, this kind of commercial basis for help for Ukraine, I don't think that would worry the Ukrainians necessarily, but I think it probably does send another message to Vladimir Putin that American help for Ukraine is perhaps in the balance.
4th of July travel ramping up. More than 72 million Americans projected to drive and fly this holiday period, according to AAA. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Progressive presents Employee of the Month. Small Business Edition. Today's recipient from Lucky Larry's Landscaping, Larry! Larry saved his business money with a quick commercial auto quote from Progressive. Does it help he's his own marketing manager, accountant, executive assistant, and never been late? Technically, yes, but saving really put him over the edge. So, Larry, give Larry a round of applause. Be your own Larry. See if you could save in as little as 7 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
It's 4:05 now on News Talk KVNU, and I'm Will Feelright with your local news update. Well, a police officer is facing charges for driving under the influence and road rage after a reckless driving incident in Magna last week. Now, the Utah Highway Patrol reports that troopers responded back on June 22nd to a crash in Magna. Now, there they found a Toyota pickup in a canal allegedly driven by 34-year-old Zachary Robert Allen. Now, witnesses told troopers that Allen was driving recklessly, speeding, cutting off vehicles, and tailgating a Ford Bronco. Now, one witness explained that Allen had tried to pass on the left, ran out of room, hit the dirt shoulder, and then collided with the Bronco before plunging into the canal. Now, troopers noted an odor of alcohol on Allen's breath and other indicators of impairment. Now, while Allen claimed sobriety, he refused field sobriety tests, and a friend later told officers that Allen had been drinking earlier. Now, the city of West Jordan confirmed that an employee's arrest for DUI had occurred and stated that an internal review is underway. Meanwhile, the 23-year-old motorcyclist who was killed earlier this week has been identified. Jose Flores was driving in West Valley City at around 3:50 on Monday. Now, according to the police, he had crashed into the back of a vehicle that was stopped to make a left-hand turn. Now, he died at the scene. No other injuries were reported. Early evidence indicated that excessive speed was a factor in the crash. And as thousands of Utahns are preparing to celebrate the Independence Day holiday, state officials are issuing a stern warning about impaired recreation. Now, the Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation and the Department of Natural Resources Law Enforcement are increasing patrols this 4th of July weekend as part of the national campaign called Operation Drywater. Now, their message is clear. Operating a boat or off-road highway vehicle while impaired, is illegal and can lead to fatalities. Now, Ty Hunter, a boating program manager for the Division of Outdoor Recreation, stated that every year they see preventable deaths and injuries caused by impaired operators on waterways and trails. Now, throughout the holiday, recreation rangers will be conducting educational outreach and boost enforcement. They'll be reminding the public that Utah law prohibits operating any motorized vehicle or vessel with a blood alcohol content of 0.05% or greater. Well, we're hoping to see a little bit of relief coming in the weather, as tonight temperatures will drop into the low 60s. We'll continue to see a chance of some isolated showers, thunderstorms through the area. Now, tomorrow, temperatures expected to be into the mid-80s, and will stay in the mid-80s through Friday, as we'll continue to see a chance of some isolated showers and thunderstorms. Saturday into Sunday, temperatures will get back into the mid to high 90s. And weather is part of the news, brought to you by Triton Medical Supply and Transportation. If you're needing a ride to and from a medical appointment or hospital or nursing home, call Triton Medical Supply and Transportation at 435-557-6687. And KVNU News Time is now 4:08, and with more of KVNU's For the People, it's Jason Williams coming up next here on KVNU.
Feeling the heat? So is your lawn. Logan Extermination's Summer Back to Green treatment helps your grass bounce back from summer stress, starting at just $45 for up to 5,000 square feet. And bugs? Nope, not this July. Get Logan Extermination's Outside General Insect Spray, regularly $75, now just $60 for up to 2,000 square feet. Just mention this ad when you schedule. Call Logan Extermination at 752-8450. Online at loganextermination.net, a division of Anderson Seed and Garden.
The Above and Beyond Salute, sponsored by Firehouse Subs, recognizing first responders and other deserving individuals in our community. Friday mornings at 8:30 on News Talk KVNU.
Celebrate the spirit of America this Independence Day with this radio station. Tune in July 3rd and 4th at 10 p.m. for special patriotic music and heartfelt messages honoring our country and the heroes who defend it. July 3rd for the fireworks from Logan's Willow Park, and the 4th for the spectacular shows in Hiram and Lewiston. Special thanks to these businesses. Presto Products in Lewiston is hiring, offering a career, not just a job. Go to reynoldsconsumerproducts.com/careers to find out more. Ron Keller Tire. Why wait? Why schedule when you can pull right into Ron Keller Tire and get the quickest service you'll find for new tires and service. Located on Airport Road in Logan, Preston, Tremonton, and Malad. Daryl's Appliance, serving northern Utah for 50 years with quality appliances backed by decades of service experience. Online at darylsappliance.com. July 3rd and 4th at 10 p.m. on this radio station. Tune in, turn it up, and join your neighbors as we salute the red, white, and blue together.
KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, online at 610kvnu.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It is Wednesday, July 2nd. I'm Jason Williams, 88 degrees, almost 89, here at the Radio Ranch at 4:11 in the afternoon. It feels warmer than that. It's a busy news day at the federal level, busy news day internationally, but there's so much going on locally, and we're going to focus on all of it. I want to point people to a few different headlines to go check out that we won't spend a lot of time on here on the show, but it's something we're getting a lot of questions about. CacheValleyDaily.com has a link to the report. A lot of concern here in Utah, here in northern Utah especially, of the reports of measles going around. I bluntly say this every time. This is the most preventable health issue that I think has ever come along. The vaccine is extremely effective. It is easy to get. It has been around for decades. I don't know what else to say, but on Tuesday, 2 new measles infections have been reported by the Utah Department of Health and Human Services, bringing the total to 9. For those who have asked, that's why I wanted to lead the show with this. No, There are no reports right now, at least, of any cases in Cache Valley. And 9 doesn't sound like a lot until, again, you factor in that this is entirely preventable. 90% of Utahns are currently vaccinated against measles, and there is no need for concern of a massive outbreak of any kind. Leisha Nolan, the Utah State epidemiologist, said because of that vaccination rate. But for those who aren't vaccinated and do get infected, this is a really serious disease. And also, Utahns who are vaccinated, if they do happen to contract it, they're like all vaccines, their recovery will be faster and their symptoms milder. And, of course, they won't transmit it to others, which is kind of the whole point. But generally, for most people, and 90-some-odd% of the time, it prevents you from getting it in the first place. One of the reasons for concern over this, again, even though there are only 9 cases so far, is that measles does almost every single time require a hospitalization for someone who is unvaccinated. And the symptoms often don't appear for 7 to 14 days. And the symptoms are pretty common symptoms: high fever, cough, runny nose, red eyes. And you really don't know that something's seriously wrong until either the fever goes on for multiple days, beyond what maybe a flu or a cold would do to you. And then oftentimes, you start to see signs of that rash, that outbreak on your skin. And that's when people usually go in. At that point, they're highly contagious and have, at least high odds, have passed it to others. So, and again, the reason this is just so eyebrow raising is this is so preventable. The measles vaccine is not new. Decades and decades it's been in use, and it is very effective and easy to get. And 2 of the 9 cases here in Utah have required hospitalization already, and this is, again, completely avoidable. And currently, nationwide, there are 1,277 measles cases reported currently. Not like for the year, just currently there are 1,200 people with measles nationwide, according to the CDC's Prevention and Control Lab that tracks that data. So, and 97% of those currently with the measles infection are unvaccinated. So, that's data you just can't ignore. So if you need information on how to get vaccinated if you're not, or how to check that you are if you're not unsure as an adult or for your children, contact the Bear River Health Department. That's one of the easiest ways here locally to figure that out. They can let you know if there's a record of vaccination for measles and when, and then they can also, if necessary, point you towards places where you can get the vaccine, or even make arrangements for you to get it through them. So that's basically the update. But we had several questions, 2 over the weekend and 3 more yesterday, after Deseret News ran a story with a big, I'm not pointing the finger at Deseret News, but it was a big eye-catching headline that kind of created a little bit more concern than maybe is necessary. This isn't something to be concerned about. This is nothing like COVID-19 in those early years of the pandemic, when they were, stacking the dead in refrigerated trucks outside of hotels in New York, which understandably caused a lot of panic. This is nothing like that. It's 9 cases. But my point, again, is it is 100%. Okay, to stick with the data that I just cited, we'll say 97%. It is 97% preventable with very little effort. So just to answer that question, I appreciate listeners asking about that. And again, reach out to the Bear River Health Department if you need help, figuring out what your vaccinations are, how old they are, for your children as well, if you're not sure, and where you can go about getting one. So new report also that you should check out at CacheValleyDaily.com on Utah and Idaho ranking top among the independent states. This is from Wallet Hub again, and I roll my eyes a bit at these because Wallet Hub, of course, they like to keep their name in the news. They're a business, and that's why they do these, and they're more entertaining than useful. But check it out. Utah leads the nation largely due to low rates of substance dependency. I thought that was interesting. That's one of the ways. So Utah scored low on certain other things that other states scored much higher. Wages, job market strength, international trade, things like that. But where Utah scored very high and how Utah ended up way up there with Idaho. Idaho got there because they have a lot of agriculture still. Utah, which means their economy and the people in the state tend to be less dependent on markets that are volatile. Utah got up there because we have a low level of personal vices in the populace, smoking, drinking, drug use, things like that, and a low level of dependency when it comes to the services that a person might require after battling an addiction for many years. So that bumped us up. I thought that was kind of an interesting metric to score high on. So check it out. Utah and Idaho ranking most independent of the states because of two very different reasons, but it's worth noting that there is a quality of life factor when it comes to being in a state where personal vices are low. Although I will point this out, Wallet Hub is defining personal vices pretty in a standard way: drugs, smoking, alcohol addiction, things like that. There are other vices, and they didn't look at those. Television can be a vice. Diet Coke can be a vice. But generally, well, maybe not with television, but Diet Coke, generally the health risks associated are much lower than like heroin or alcoholism. But it still can be a vice, and it does, of course, any vice, it makes you dependent. I don't know how useful these Wallet Hub surveys are. Our elected officials love to cite them, but they're always interesting, and you should check this one out. CashValleyDaily.com, more details on that as well. Coming up, this was recent news with the Cache Water District, and we haven't talked a lot about water here on the show this year so far, other than the reports on snowpack and more. But the Cache Water Conservancy District just hired a conservation coordinator. And so a board member and Logan City Council member Jeannie Simmons will be joining us later on in the show to talk about the hire and talk about the position itself, what a conservation coordinator is all about, what that job requires. So on the other side, a new report on consumer attitudes heading into the Independence Day weekend based on pre-booked travel, also just some surveying that was done on where everyone's out by Michigan State University. And the report has Utah lawmakers paying close attention as well. The big question I think a lot of state leaders have, not just in Utah but everywhere, is are we on the cusp of a recession? Are we just worried about being on the cusp of a recession? And there's another follow-up question to that. How worried are we? And is that actually, because sometimes worry about a recession can actually affect consumer habits in such a way that consumers trigger a recession. Those recessions tend to be very short-lived and rebound quickly, but it does happen. So there's everyone's treading lightly around all of this, but with a jobs report today that was very disappointing, showing that the U.S. Job market actually lost, for the first time in years, actually lost 33,000 jobs, when their expectation was that it would be 100,000 jobs added, because that's basically what we've seen for going on 6 years now. What all this means and how state leaders are reacting to it as well, as this new report is out today. On the other side here on KVN News for the People.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
Mountain Valley Heating and Air Conditioning wants to help Cache Valley feel the love. Mountain Valley Heating and Air is giving away 5 fully installed heating and air conditioning units free of charge. Go to mountainvalleyhvac.com and help make a difference one home at a time. That's mtnvalleyhvac.com. Nominate prior to September 1st, 2025. See website for all details.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance, reminding you that when you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
If you think you're too young to worry about heart disease, think again. I'm Essence Harris, and I was 30 when an angiogram found a 90% blockage in 2 arteries. Now I'm asking all women to take control of their heart health. Exercise, eat a heart-healthy diet, and above all, listen to your body. Learn more at womenheart.org.
This is Sheriff Chad Jensen. OHVs are a lot of fun, but they also come with a lot of responsibility. Please make sure you are familiar with Utah State Code as well as your local ordinances before you head onto the roadways or head up into the canyons. You may notice more deputies in the canyon areas. Our traffic unit will be out ensuring that everyone is following the regulations. We want everyone to be safe, have fun, share the roads, share the canyons, and share the trails. Check out our Facebook page for some helpful links to find Utah OHV State Code as well as many of our local city ordinances.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Thursday on This Morning, America's First News. House Republicans are back on stage with renewed pressure to pass President Trump's preferred megabill. But how willing will some be to embrace the changes to the measure approved by the Senate? Also, how to know when it's time to retire. Here are the considerations and what you can expect at the pump as you fill up for July 4th. Thursday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. New data out from the Kim C. Gardner Institute. They run an ongoing Utah consumer sentiment survey, they call this. Most of you probably know this as consumer confidence. It's a recession indicator, and it can sometimes be leading or trailing. When an economist says that something is a leading indicator, that means that sometimes it can be like a red flag that, hey, we're in a recession. But consumer confidence, consumer sentiment can also be a trailing indicator, meaning the recession has already started and consumers are just now feeling its impact. So there's always a big question whenever you see negative changes to consumer confidence, because, again, sometimes it can be something else. International events can greatly affect consumer confidence, and then they sit on their wallets, they stop spending, and that causes the economy to contract. If that happens for a week or even a month, no big concern. If it becomes a year or 2 years, big concern. You're in a recession at that point. Now, consumer confidence-triggered recessions tend to rebound more quickly and last a shorter period of time. So if it's a leading indicator, there's less concern. If consumer confidence dipping is a trailing indicator and it's because a recession has already begun and consumers are now feeling its impact, that can be a problem, because a consumer confidence-driven recession that is consumers responding to something else, an actual situation or landscape out there, that can be harder to turn around and oftentimes requires government action. So, again, where we're at, no one's saying which one of the two it is. But what we do know from the Kim C. Gardner Institute's report out today is that here in Utah, so for about a year now, there's been a national versus Utah consumer sentiment divergence. That divergence started roughly in the early part of 2024. Early part of 2024, consumer confidence nationwide started to dip. And started to get down close to where economists get worried, which is roughly the 50% range, meaning you've got half of consumers feeling okay and half feeling like maybe they're going to cancel that summer vacation just in case. And it was kind of a roller coaster. It dipped down way low throughout 2024, got to its lowest point during midsummer, started to tick back up, and then by October of 2024 was actually looking like it was headed in a good direction. And then last 2 months of 2024 bottomed out. And nationwide, we have about 56% of consumers surveyed who are feeling okay, who are feeling good about the the future of the economy here in almost just past rather the midway point of the year by a couple of days. So that obviously gets economists' attention. But what's interesting is contrasting that. The Kempsey-Gardner Institute took that data, nationwide data on consumer confidence, and they contrasted it with Utah consumer sentiment spending. And one thing that interesting that kind of happened back in early 2024, when nationwide consumer confidence started to take a big dip, and then again it kind of rebounded towards the end of 2024, and then before the year was over, just bottomed out. And we're down to about 56% consumer confidence right now, meaning 56% again of spenders out there are feeling good about the future of the economy. In Utah, we never took the big dip in early 2024. Utah basically held steady through 2024 and actually ticked up a bit midsummer. And then towards the end of the year, when the nation hit its peak in late October, and then started to bottom out until we get to mid-2025 and just barely over half of consumers feeling confident, Utah actually surged a bit higher into October than the nation last year with about a 90-point consumer confidence level, but then took the same dip. Now, in Utah, consumer confidence only dipped down to where you're looking at about 78% of the consumers out there in this Kempsey-Gardner survey feeling confident. So 78% of consumers surveyed by Kempsey-Gardner Institute over the last year here in Utah are feeling okay about the future of the economy. Nationwide, again, that's 56%. But what economists are looking at, and I reached out to our friend Mark Knoll. He said he'll join us on a future show to kind of explain this, but he did a quick version. He said what they're watching is that even though Utah consumers have a higher level of confidence than the national average consumer, the pattern tracked perfectly. The dip in October that started in October of last year and dropped way down. Utah followed that same pattern. We were higher to begin with in October, so we didn't drop down below that 78%, whereas the nation dropped down to 56% on average. But he said the pattern was exactly the same as the national dip. So the numbers were different, but if you track this out on a linear graph, he said it's exactly the same. And there's a lot of theories as to what that is. But he said if you break it down month by month, there's some pretty obvious indicators. Obviously, inflation and rising prices and media coverage of inflation and rising prices during the presidential election. And then the increase in media coverage of inflation here in 2025 that kind of dropped off a bit in the spring and then picked back up in May because inflation hasn't really gone down. So he said that's a factor that they assume is part of it, but he said it can also just be world events. And if you notice this, the certain times when Israel's actions in Palestine and what Russia and Ukraine, what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, he said you can actually kind of pin this with certain international events. Sometimes you can pin it with elections. He said what's unique about 24 or 25 is it doesn't really follow a news headline pattern that you can find an obvious one, but it does match the national average. So shorter answer, they're not sure. But right now, as of the report put out today, Kempsey-Gardner Institute says Utah consumers are feeling much less confident in the future of the economy than they did in October of last year. But we still are about 25% higher than the national average of consumer confidence. So Utahns are still feeling pretty positive about the future, but it did take a big downturn starting in about October of 2024 and has not fully rebounded from that. So if you're curious how they do these, by the way, this is an ongoing survey. They do it year-round. They also work with the University of Michigan Survey of Consumers project to do these. And the questions basically measure residents' views on they ask about the president. How do you feel about the present economic situation? And then how do you feel, what are your expectations for the future? And so they ask a series of questions along those lines. Data gathered from the questions are used to create this Utah Consumer Sentiment Index. Now, this is different than, like, say, the Zions Bank Consumer Confidence Survey, which takes a longer look at investment patterns and more. But demographic questions in this survey can be very revealing, Noel told me today. So they are included in the survey, and roughly 400 interview samples are done on a rolling weekly basis throughout the year. So pretty reliable for tracking trends, if not getting the numbers and percentages exactly on. So if you want to be a part of these surveys, by the way, you can sign up via the Kempsey Gardner Institute website, gardner.utah.edu. And if you'd like to see the data itself, the raw data, you can actually download the data via that same website, gardner.utah.edu. And that goes for any of their publications as well. So what's interesting, one final note on this, also in the report today, they also track the Economic Council forecast as a part of this. Utah has an Economic Council, and they do a quarterly economic forecast. And this is a collaborative project through the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah, every other major university, including USU, the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, and more. And it's got a lot of economic professor terminology in it, but it's pretty easy to understand. And right now in the U.S., nationwide, when asked, do you expect a recession in the next 12 months, 44% of respondents nationwide said yes. In Utah, it was only 38%. 38% of respondents said they expect a recession in the next 12 months. And Noel said that's a good thing because, again, sometimes lack of confidence from consumers can actually trigger a recession. So having that be below 50%, both nationally and here in Utah, who expect a recession in the next year, that means you've still got 50% out there that don't and are probably still spending, buying stuff, planning vacations, and more. So check it out. It's a really interesting look at the economy, again, with some nerdy economic professor terminology in it, but pretty easy to understand. And again, state economist Mark Knoll said he'll join us next week and break this down a little further as far as what it says about future trends in Utah as well, and public policy that might be coming in response. We'll be back with more of KVN News for the People after the news with KVN News. We'll feel right.
Thank you, Jason. A new report from Utah State University reveals a significant disparity in mental health diagnosis among Utah women compared to men. Now, according to the 2025 Utah Women and Mental Health Report that was released earlier this week by the Utah Women in Leadership Project, 32.5% of women in Utah have been diagnosed with depression by a medical professional compared to just 19.5% of men. Now, the study highlights that Utah women are also more likely to self-report experiencing more than 7 days of poor mental health in the last month. It's a statistic particularly pronounced in the 18 to 34 age group. Now, researchers suggest improving this situation will require increasing health insurance coverage, especially for minorities, expanding access to care, reducing stigma, and strengthening social connections and safety. Now, while Utah agencies are working to improve mental health services, the report also emphasized a need for strategies that specifically address belonging and social safety within communities. Well, hundreds of youth campers at a church pioneer trek in Idaho had to be evacuated yesterday as a wildfire was burning dangerously close. Now, the Fort Hall fire started yesterday afternoon and has burned more than 1,000 acres on the Fort Hall Reservation east of Blackfoot. A local bus company was sent to help shuttle campers out of the area. Altogether, about 400 youth were transported to a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Stake Center, where everyone was reportedly accounted for and determined to be safe. And plans for the redevelopment of the Smiths Ballpark in Salt Lake City have been unveiled by the Community Reinvestment Agency following the departure of the Salt Lake Bees baseball team. Now, the agency expects to present its vision to the board coming up next week. Now, the proposed plan, shaped by community input, emphasizes green space and a walkable promenade. Now, the reimagined space will feature an adaptive reuse of the southwest wing for entertainment and a new festival street for community markets, along with an enhanced pedestrian pathway. Now, the plan also calls for a new fire station, a library, and mixed-use attainable housing options. Now, officials anticipate that the project, which will be both a public and private partnership, will begin sometime in 2026. Well, it's been a hot afternoon, and now we'll see temperatures tonight only dropping into the low 60s. We'll continue to see a chance of some isolated thunderstorms as we head into the overnight hours tonight. Tomorrow, we'll see a little relief from these hot temperatures. It'll be right around the mid-80s for Thursday and into Friday, still calling for a chance of some isolated showers. And then Saturday and Sunday, clearing up with temperatures back into the mid to high 80s. And weather this hour brought to you by Whole Tree Care. They're still offering 10% off to have your trees and shrubs trimmed. Call them today at 760-6587. I'm Will Feelwright with your KVNU News Update.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. A federal judge has ordered Sean Diddy Combs remain in custody, denying bail. It follows a jury's split verdict today, acquitting Combs on sex trafficking and racketeering, but guilty of prostitution-related charges. ABC's Rena Roy is in Lower Manhattan.
Prosecutor Maureen Comey said he's extremely violent with an extraordinary temper who has shown no remorse and no regret. She said his brazenness is unmatched. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilo said to the judge, I just think we should trust him. He's not going to flee. He just deserves the chance. But again, at that point, the judge denied his release.
Defense attorneys now asking a judge to move up the October sentencing date. In Idaho, Brian Koberger pleaded guilty to all counts in the stabbing murders of 4 University of Idaho students in 2022. That plea deal spares him the death penalty, sentencing later this month. In New Jersey, emergency crews responding to reports of a plane that went down in a wooded area near Cross Keys Airport. This is ABC
Today's
News.
hearing aid technology can improve not only your life, but the lives of the people who care about you. Once again, you'll be able to hear the reason for their laughter and understand conversations. Dr. Paul Danes will customize a hearing improvement program to meet your unique requirements, whatever they are. Call Dr. Danes for an appointment at 753-HERE and let him show you how.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Bringing Wall Street to Main Street. From your local experts in downtown Logan, this is the Adams Wealth Advisors Market Report.
Hi, this is Ty with Adams Wealth Advisors. Stocks closed at new all-time highs today despite early volatility driven by soft economic data and fresh trade headlines. Investor sentiment was buoyed by optimism around select trade deals, even as concerns linger over upcoming tariff decisions. President Trump reaffirmed that he does not intend to delay his July 9th tariff announcement, explicitly referencing Japan's refusal to lift restrictions on U.S. rice exports. At the same time, a limited trade agreement with Vietnam was finalized. The apparel sector responded positively, rallying sharply on the news. The Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 11 points to close at 44,484. The Nasdaq rose 0.73% to 22,642, and the S&P 500 gained 0.47% to finish at 6,227. Small caps outperformed again, with the Russell 2000 advancing 1.31% to 2,226. Sector performance was mostly positive. Energy, materials, and technology led the way, each posting over 1% gains. However, utilities and healthcare lagged, falling more than 0.8% as investors reacted cautiously to provisions within the proposed One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which could impact pricing and reimbursement structures in those sectors. In fixed income, bond yields moved higher as a sharp sell-off in the UK government bonds rippled through global markets. The U.S. 5-year Treasury yield rose 3 basis points to 3.87%, while the 10-year increased 4 basis points to 4.29%. Economic data was mixed. ADP employment data came in well below expectations, showing a loss of 33,000 private sector jobs versus a consensus gain of 100,000. Markets now turn to tomorrow's key reports: the official BLS job report, trade balance, service sector PMI, and factory orders.
That's your update from Adams Wealth Advisors, guiding your financial future one day at a time. For personalized help planning yours, reach out to us at 435-752-1702. See you soon, Cache Valley. Advisory services offered through Adams Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. For important disclosures and more information, visit adamswealthadvisors.com.
No matter what the conditions, DD Auto and Salvage can get your vehicle up and off your property. Now is the time to plan to make extra cash by calling DD Auto and Salvage and moving that old vehicle. Let them pay you for that junk vehicle. DD Auto and Salvage makes it so easy to get rid of your junker vehicles, paying you the most money possible. If you have metal, DD Auto and Salvage in Logan wants to pay you today. Call 787-1204. That's 787-1204 today. See store for details.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Coming up in hour 2, Logan City Council member and Cache Water District board member Jeannie Simmons joining us. The board for the Water Conservancy District just hired a conservation coordinator. We'll talk about what that position's all about and who they chose and how. That's coming up in hour 2. County Executive David Zook had an opportunity to attend Governor Cox's patriotism event. This was basically Let's Celebrate 250, which was the Governor Cox's July 4th event at the Capitol, centered around the planned celebration for America's 250 years. And Governor Cox said at the event, it's time for Utah to show the rest of the country what patriotism really means, kind of hinting that patriotism has been a little twisted and confused by our current politics, which I 100% agree. He said it's time for Utah to show the rest of the nation what patriotism really means, because there's nothing more un-American than hating fellow Americans. Governor Cox said at the event yesterday, unity does not mean agreement. It means working together. And I believe, or it means believing in the institutions that those founders created 250 years ago and are still alive today. Cache County Executive David Zook said, I completely agree, and we should actually bring this even more local than just the state of Utah. This is something we can do here in Cache Valley, working together to build up our community, involve young people, service projects, all kinds of things. So what Cache County Executive David Zook had to say in a recently penned op-ed after attending the event, that's coming up in hour 2 as well. All right, more from the Kempsey Gardner Economic Attitudes Survey report that was out today. You can read this at CacheValleyDaily.com. This combines a bunch of different things. As I mentioned at the start of the show, this recent Walla Hub survey on consumer perceptions, even if it doesn't match the reality, how consumers perceive the future of the economy, with 38% of Americans not feeling very financially independent right now, headed into the 4th of July Independence Day weekend. Wallet Hub found in their survey 53% actually plan to spend less this holiday, and 79% Wallet Hub found of those surveys believe the American independence is actually threatened right now by rising federal debt and the low wages. So that's what Wallet Hub found. The Kempsey Gardner economic report shows that Utahns, following a national trend, although we had more consumer confidence to begin with at a high in October, where the nation hit a high as well, mid-October-ish. It started to bottom out end of October, early November, and has just trended down since then until nationwide we have about only 56% of consumers feeling confident in the nationwide surveying. Here in Utah, the Kempsey Gardner Institute found we still got 78% of consumers feeling confident, but we were way higher to begin with, and we followed the exact trend. So mid-October to now, there's just been a downward slump of consumer confidence. Today, of course, jobs report showing that the economy actually lost jobs. Not a lot, and nothing to panic about because these things can come and go. But it is the first time in 6 years, and so it did get a lot of headlines, understandably. But the U.S. economy actually lost 33,000 jobs for the first time in 6 years. So obviously, there's a lot of questions about this and concern over a pending recession. But some additional data that is encouraging, I think. Well, something that's not encouraging, we'll get to that first. Consumer attitudes, back to the Kempsey Gardner ongoing survey of Utahns' attitudes. What they found basically is Utahns, despite their confidence in the future of the economy long term here in the state and nationally, Utahns were holding off on the more expensive vacation destinations to a larger extent than they did this time last year. They also noticed, now this was interesting, knowing they were going to publish this around July 4th, they asked specific questions about fireworks. And they worked with the University of South Florida in St. Petersburg that also did a survey on fireworks spending, which I did not know this. Apparently, economists do argue. Now, I guess I did know they argue that certain types of consumer spending that happens every year at a certain time, holiday spending, basically, they do look at that as a recession indicator. Black Friday spending, Christmas time spending in general, economists watch that closely, and that can be a recession indicator or predictor even if that spending is way down. But they did this with fireworks purchases. Now, the researchers, both at Kempsey Gardner and at the University of South Florida, said you have to couch this a little bit with the fact that the president's tariffs have greatly affected the fireworks prices and availability this year as well. If you've noticed a smaller selection of fireworks or a lower quality even, or the prices are way up, that's tariff related. But those who are in the business of selling fireworks every year, the people you see traveling through Utah and setting up in parking lots this time of year, they kind of saw, a lot of them at least, saw this coming and bought ahead. So a lot of us saw the president hinting during the campaigns even about a trade war, and they started buying then. But others have acknowledged, the Kempsey Gardner Institute reports, that again, working with researchers at the University of South Florida to do the surveying, some others have acknowledged that they didn't buy ahead and they are passing those costs to pay for the tariffs onto consumers. Spokesman for the American Pyrotechnics Association cautioned, though, that significantly increased tariffs on Chinese fireworks might cripple the industry long term, and they are lobbying aggressively to get the president to back down on some of those Chinese tariffs. That's a long-term kind of thing. But so, again, the economists behind the research say couch this data with that a little bit, because so what they found, in short, is that people are spending way less on fireworks this year so far. And I'm not talking about consumers. I'm talking about the purchasers, those who sell. They spent way less. They anticipate selling less this year. And they are passing some costs of the tariffs on. Others bought ahead and will be, charging the same prices and not passing, any additional costs on. The choices and quality might be a little different because of where they had to buy instead of their traditional distributors. So it is affecting the market. And again, the spokesperson for the American Pyrotechnics Association said these tariffs will cripple our industry. They need to go. Where are consumers at? Well, here in Utah, so far, now this has only been a couple of days, but so far there has been an uptick in fireworks purchasing, at least in the early part of the fireworks are legal to purchase window, headed into July 4th. The Kempsey Gardner Institute says what they'll do is next week they'll have a follow-up appendix to tack onto this report when they have actual data on fireworks sales. But it's kind of cool to think about, or maybe it's weird to think about economists, highly trained, highly educated economists with a lot of experience, some here in Utah, some nationally, and they're actually looking at how many fireworks people are buying for their kids to light in the driveway as a recession indicator. But it makes sense if you think about it. But again, good news here in Utah, despite a lot of bad news on the long-term front with tariffs affecting the fireworks market, with some fireworks distributors and sellers purchasing early because they saw the president, when he was a candidate last year, hinting at a trade war with China. Others who didn't are just buying at the current costs and passing the costs on to consumers. That could be, just everything you need, a perfect recipe for a very volatile and unpredictable fireworks season. And there's some expectation that's what we'll see. But here in Utah, so far, fireworks sales are actually up. It's early. We're only a few days in, but actually up from where they were this time last year. So We'll keep you posted on fireworks as a recession indicator. But again, this is just a fascinating look at Utah's economy. But it's also kind of revealing on the consumer attitude index, again, at how sometimes these things pick up a momentum of their own. So long story short, again, very few signs we're actually in a recession or near one. Some, but very few. Consumer attitude is, though, very hesitant. Consumers feel it's very possible we enter a recession in the next 12 months, and they're showing that with how often or not they're opening their wallets, and when they do, how much they're spending. So that's the short and sweet of the Kim C. Gardner Report on Utah's consumer attitudes. Link on the Facebook page, and we'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
July is the month of backyard barbecues, fireworks, and parades. With all the hustle and bustle, it's important to remember the true reason for celebration: independence. At Primrose Home Care and Hospice, we're devoted to helping you and your loved ones stay independent. Our bodies experience lots of changes in our lives, but that doesn't mean we have to change our life. Primrose is dedicated to helping you maintain a healthy, active lifestyle so you don't have to give anything up. After all, independence is our way of life. Visit us at primrosecare.com or call 787-1369. Primrose Home Care and Hospice. We're your home team.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old.
But I am a camping influencer.
You know what? I'll bet you $5. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shelley Flace with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. If you own firearms, it's your responsibility to make sure they're always stored safely. Hiding them in a closet or drawer is not enough. Kids know where they are. Research shows the risk of injury and death is lower if guns are stored unloaded and locked up, with the ammunition locked in a separate place. This is important when children are young, as well as when they grow into teenagers. For more, talk with your pediatrician or visit healthychildren.org.
Thursday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. It will be the eve of the 4th of July, which means we will have a special guest host for all of you. He is Brian Mudd from WJNO in Palm Beach. All that coming your way. Make sure you don't miss it. Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show, Thursday edition on the eve of July 4th.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM at 610 AM.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Coming up in hour 2, Cache County Executive David Zook on his experience attending the governor's patriotic event at the Capitol this week, recognizing the 250th anniversary of the country being celebrated. The governor said, let's bring a little bit of this to Utah and show the rest of the country what patriotism really means, implying that the word had been kind of twisted a little bit in our national politics. We'll talk about what the governor had to say, and County Executive David Zook in an op-ed echoing these sentiments, saying, I really responded to this message, and here's how we can bring a little bit of that to Cache Valley. That's coming up in hour 2, preceded by Jeannie Simmons, Logan City Council member, and board member of the Cache Water District. They recently hired a conservation coordinator. Jeannie will be with us to talk about what that job entails and who they hired and how they chose that person. So that'll kick us off in hour 2. To wrap things up here, just in case you haven't followed the calendar and you're looking for something to get out and do for the extended weekend and the July 4th Independence Day holiday, 4th of July city celebrations all around northern Utah. If you're going to be as far south as Davis County, you've got Liberty Days in Layton, July 3rd and 4th. You've got the 4th of July festivities in Clearfield, which are running all week this week at their local amphitheater. They've got concerts, a downtown home parade, all kinds of things. There are even some water polo competitions happening at the Layton or Clearfield Aquatic Center. But assuming you're not that far south, Let's take a look here in the northern part of the state in Box Elder County. You've got on Friday Brigham City celebrating their 4th of July celebration, and they've got their annual tradition fundraiser, Dunk a Cop. This is a Dunk a Cop dunking booth operating 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Alongside horseshoe tournaments, food trucks, and more. That's all happening at Pioneer Park, 700 West 4th Street in Brigham City on Friday. They have a concert at 8 p.m., the Ty Pebley Band, and then dusk, roughly 9:45, 10 p.m., they'll kick off their fireworks there in Brigham City. So there is a little bit of what's happening in Box Elder County to our west. Here in Cache County, of course, Thursday night, July 3rd, Logan City's annual fireworks show at Willow Park. Starting roughly at 10 p.m. It is free. Then Friday, July 4th, Hiram has the Top of Utah Freedom Run. This is almost a 10-mile downhill race. And that starts at 7 a.m. at the Hiram Hydro Parkway at Blacksmith Fork Canyon. And then, of course, the Hiram City Parade, which is kind of valley-wide famous, that will take place on down Main Street, Hiram, as well, followed by some food and games and stuff like that at the Hiram Park there by the Lincoln Elementary School. So you've also got some big celebrations going on. The 419th Fighter Wing stationed at Hill Air Force Base will conduct its traditional flyover of Utah cities. That is Friday between 8:45 and 11:30 a.m., subject to weather and where you're at. They'll fly over. They'll start in Salt Lake City and then just kind of work their way. I think they go down to Vernal, then up through Park City, and then, so they hit here close to last. So it'll be closer to between 10:30 and 11:30 a.m. when you see that 419th Fighter Wing flyover Friday morning here in Cache Valley. But they will be flying over. So some pretty cool stuff going on, to say the least. You can see the full list. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. This is basically a list I put together looking through the Salt Lake Tribune, Deseret News, CacheValleyDaily.com, and more. And get out and do something fun. It's going to be a little cooler, too, than it has been. A little. Just a little. And a 10% chance of showers Friday night. So we'll see if it manifests. Hour 2 of our show kicks off with Jeannie Simmons, Logan City Council member and Water District Board member, on their new hire, the Conservation Coordinator for the Cache Water District. She'll be with us to kick things off in Hour 2 right after this here on KVNU Logan.